Friday the 13th, 2014 has turned out to be a horrible day for Iraq, a terrible day for Syria, the Middle East, and the rest of the world, and especially the Christians of Iraq. They're having their heads chopped off or are being shot in the back of the head, and the images are showing up in international newscasts worldwide of Christian men, women, and children having their heads hacked off. 800,000 fleeing Baghdad to Crete and other cities. Major cities across the nation of Iraq have fallen to the ISIS al-Qaeda group, publicly funded by NATO, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the United States, and France in the last 3.5 years, attacking Libya, Syria, and our ally Egypt. This is part of a long-term deal with Saudi Arabia to turn the entire Middle East over to the Sunni-based Wahhabist system. Now, to understand what's happening currently, we're going to, in a few minutes, go into some of the history of this, because it's hidden in plain view. But because the population doesn't know history, they're doomed to repeat it. Most Americans know al-Qaeda was founded by the United States government back in 1979 by Zbigniew Brzezinski. That was the name of the computer program at the CIA called the Base, or in Arabic, Al-Qaeda. Fast forward, we're told they attacked us on 9/11. Al-Qaeda is a real group. They are terrorists. They're funded by Saudi Arabia. They do attack people, but they're doing it for the criminals that work in the Western governments as a destabilizing secret army to cause civil wars, stage terror attacks, so the West can take our liberties, spy on us, secretly arrest us and disappear us, torture us under the NDAA and Patriot Acts that both parties have supported. I'm going to go over some of the history and proof of that in a moment. Kurt Nimmo has a big article out tonight with all the links and proof at Infowars.com. Now, going back 3.5 years ago, Western bases in Iraq, Associated Press, Reuters, you name it, were funding radical Islamicists out of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other Wahhabist-held areas. And the media said, is it good to be funding groups affiliated with al-Qaeda? They're not affiliated with al-Qaeda. They are al-Qaeda. They fly the flag of al-Qaeda. They are Wahhabist out of Saudi Arabia. It is the exact same thing. And they've now gotten medium and heavy weapons from NATO and the West. That's what Benghazi was about, to attack Syria. That's not denied. And that's why Ted Cruz and others said we shouldn't be al-Qaeda's air force over there. And it stopped Obama from a full-scale air bombardment to turn Syria over to the very same group that couldn't take over Syria right across the border. I'm going to go over the map in a moment, who've now raced into Iraq, been left alone, been given weapons, who are now in a modern blitzkrieg with heavy weapons and thousands of brand new Mercedes, Toyota trucks, you name it, attacking and coming in and, again, literally executing police, military. I've got all the headlines here. We're going to be putting some of those on screen. Let me just go over some of these headlines before I break down the big picture and tell you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. AP, America's being evacuated from Iraq Air Base. Jerome Corsi's on the radio show today. Contractors contacted him. 200 of them are surrounded in a fort, in a base, by al-Qaeda, swearing to kill them. The al-Qaeda is real. They're being turned loose and armed by NATO. They will kill Americans. That's the #1 target. Then there'll be bigger defense budgets to fight them later. This is very sophisticated. Even the low-level al-Qaeda folks don't know this. It's the higher levels that are in and I have government documents and articles we're going to break down showing that in a moment from 2 other conflicts. Continuing, Iraq crisis. Baghdad prepares for the worst as Islamicist militants vow to capture the capital and are now entering the capital, and the police are fleeing and just throwing down their weapons because they were already run by the West and infiltrated. They've been told to basically stand down. Here's another one. ISIS butchers leave roads lined with decapitated police and soldiers. Battle for Baghdad looms as thousands answer Iraq government's call to arms and jihadists bear down on capital. This is unbelievable. The Iraqi government wasn't doing what they were told by the globalists, so now they send in al-Qaeda. ISIS is now imposing Sharia law, just like they did in Libya, and even our own government admits Libya is much worse than it was when Gaddafi was in. The executions are just continuing by the thousands an hour. It's being reported. Al-Qaeda flags, just as in Libya, are being hoisted up everywhere. Our own government double-crossed our allies in Egypt a few years ago, removed Hosni Mubarak, who was no angel, but he had stability. Christians were at peace. You could visit the country. There was basic freedom. Compared to now, Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood were given power by the West. The military turned against that, overthrew them. Our own government has been backing Al-Qaeda, trying to overthrow and kill the Egyptian military. Remember that when you're at the airport and they want to grope your genitals because of Saudi Arabian terrorist? Remember, you're the terrorist, not them. They say the Tea Party is now the #1 enemy, not Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has got our Air Force drones already bombing over there, supposedly against them, and it's all just for show so they can act like they're not arming them. And speaking of that, I have a couple articles that deal with that subject. This is out of the Wall Street Journal. That's also in the Daily Beast. Iraq's terrorists are becoming a full-blown army. Pentagon, Iraq rebels may have captured U.S. military equipment. The Hill, folks, they've given them the weapons in Benghazi. That's the cover-up for this. I mean, it's admitted. So there is literally a blitzkrieg taking place right now. 800,000 refugees fleeing. And, oh, they got those Stinger missiles from our military bases. In Iraq, they found them on the side of the road. You found that robbed money from the bank, you know, in the back of a shoebox in the alley. I mean, this is incredible. But U.S. secretly flying drones over Iraq, but it's not stopping Al-Qaeda. Oh, this is how dumb they think everyone is. And they'll say, oh, Obama looks like a fool now that Iraq's falling apart. It's his job to look like a fool. So the establishment can put all the blame on him, and he's terrible. I don't like him. But the point is, he's just a puppet. This is all meant on the grand chessboard to turn the whole Middle East over to Saudi Arabia, just as British intelligence has been doing since 1901. That's mainline history. I'm going to break that down here in just a moment. Congress says Iraq vets are hopelessly watching as their gains are lost. They were there to kick out the secular leader Saddam Hussein, who'd been a CIA officer who was set up and told to attack Iran and Kuwait. I'm not defending him, but he was a CIA officer, not an asset. That's declassified. Look it up. He was put into power in '79, set up later to then remove him because they had women going to college and not wearing burqas and rock and roll on the radio, and put Al-Qaeda in charge of the whole region. But that was too obvious back in 2007, 8, or 9. So you've got to do it later with a Saudi Arabian proxy army, and that is in the Belfast Times mainstream news, breaking down the Saudi Arabians bragging that they have been funding the entire time the insurgency in Syria, Libya. I mean, that's on record. That's all over mainstream news 3 years ago. But they think you're dumb and don't remember that. Well, the Belfast Times, Iraq crisis, Sunni caliphate has been bankrolled by Saudi Arabia, where 15 of the 19 hijackers came from, to then attack, think about that, the country that had nothing to do with it. And now, 12 years after 9/11, 2 invasions of Iraq, 1 million dead Iraqis plus, Al-Qaeda's being given the country to murder every Christian they can get their hands on and blow up mosques of minority Muslim groups that are peaceful. And it's all meant to cause a total Sunni Shiite civil war between Iran and the proxy forces that are all over the Middle East, in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon. This is the stated clash of civilizations, the Wolfowitz Doctrine, the Brzezinski Doctrine. It's bipartisan. This is what Wesley Clark talked about, the plan to take all these countries. You do it by civil war. What's Obama want to do now with the gun confiscation plan he announced? Australian-style total confiscation last week with an executive order they're looking at doing. They want to cause a civil war here, saying the Tea Party are terrorists. This isn't a game. This is rule by proxy army. Now, let's go over some of the history of Al-Qaeda. Then I'll go to the map, show you what's currently happening. Undisputed. Lawrence of Arabia is just Hollywood's packaging of it. It really started in 1901. You can read it in the encyclopedia. They took a 200-square-mile area held by some really hardcore bandits who'd been robbing caravans for thousands of years. The Wahhabists, they were bandits before they were even Muslims, before Muhammad even came along. And these are the folks where Islam started. And they were given weapons to take over from the old empire that the British were fighting in World War I, the Turks. And so during that whole period, they then sent in the Wahhabists to finally overthrow the folks that were in Syria at that time and controlling most of the Middle East. It was a British Empire takeover of the Middle Eastern Empire of the Turks. Now, fast forward, the Turks are now under British control, under globalist control, in a power-sharing deal with NATO and the EU. And so they're attacking Syria today. So it's different today. But you can go read about the history of that. So this has always gone on. Al-Qaeda didn't start in 1979 officially. It did. But it really started in 1901 under the first king of Saudi Arabia. It took him 30 years, 1901 to 1931, to take over the entire area. Now they're going to be given Iraq, Iran. They're being given everything. They're being allowed to invade and take over with jihadists as far south and west as Nigeria. I mean, Kenya. They're just shooting Christians everywhere, taking over. Again, our government financing them to kill Christians. That's the apple of their eye. The scandal's so huge, it's hiding in plain view, and no one even knows this. I want to remind you this has been done before. Airlift of Evil, November 2001, 1 month after the fake invasion of Afghanistan. Oh, our troops were getting killed fighting real Taliban, folks that didn't want to give up their property, give up their opium, and 14-year-old conscripts put in ditches to be bombed by U.S. planes who thought they were fighting al-Qaeda. 40,000 real al-Qaeda Taliban were put, Council on Foreign Relations, AP, Reuters, NBC, look it up, Times of London, were put and paid in gold, flown into Pakistan to start destabilizing Pakistan. And that's not just the admitted facts. General Hamid Gul, the former supreme commander of the military, the head founder of operations against the Russians in Afghanistan, exclusively comes on our show 5 separate times to confirm my analysis and to say, yes, they've put al-Qaeda here to destabilize and stir up the folks they're affiliated with, but real Muslims who are affiliated with Wahhabist-type Sunnis, but aren't al-Qaeda, to stir them up with drone attacks and other things so they'll overthrow our secular government. Just like they're doing it in Syria, just like they're doing it in Iraq. And then just like they use them in Europe and the U.S. to take our rights in the name of fighting the group that they control. Al-Qaeda is the secret army skeleton key meant to open every door for total control across the world. So there's the Airlift of Evil article. There it is. British Special Forces caught dressed up as Arab terrorists in 2006, 7, and 8. They got caught dressed up by Iraqi police attacking and shooting Shiites so they could cause a war between Shiites and Sunnis and get a civil war going. Again, same story, BBC, Guardian, they all had to report on that operation when it got blown wide open. So if they can't get al-Qaeda into an area to stir stuff up, they'll dress up with the big bin Laden beards, the turban on their head, the black flags, and go do it. We've shown you photos of those guys. They had to have tanks go into the Iraqi jail and blow it up just to get these guys out because they were being interrogated and it all came out. So that's why we know how this works. You want to make trillions off defense contracting? No bids? Put al-Qaeda in. Sure, some of the real al-Qaeda hate Americans and even get killed. They're dumb grunts too. They don't know the big picture. I talk to retired generals and they go, yeah, that's the plan. That's what generals really talk about, Alex. You're right. That's the great strategy. I have to talk to 3-star generals to people understand this, and it's so simple. I have conversations at night with congressmen, senators, generals, folks who are scared to come on my show, and that's fine, but who want to talk to me because they know I understand this. I'm not bragging. I don't understand why I understand all this military stuff and the general public can't figure it out. It's so simple. I mean, I just do not understand it. This is in plain view. It's totally evil. And the public's like, gee, it's terrible. A secret al-Qaeda army with thousands of vehicles just showed up and is blitzkrieging and is taking major cities and is about to take Baghdad on Friday the 13th. How did they do it? Why do they have American arms? Oh, it sucks. They picked them up on the ground. This is insane. It shows the globalist. This is the beginning of World War III through proxy wars. Just like they put Nazis in control of Ukraine, overthrew it. Obama called it duly elected. And then when the Russians fight back, they're terrorists. I'm not siding with the Russians, but they're not doing all this. It's incredible how dangerous this is. World War II started with proxy wars. World War I started with proxy wars. I have been having dread as you know, with all the stuff we see, but also in my gut, folks. And I think this weekend is going to be very serious. We need to be watching this very closely. Iran is saying they're going to send troops in. They've already sent in 3 brigades into Iraq, right over their border. I want to play Ted Cruz and Rand Paul warning about this 6 months ago. And we came together and stopped the open bombardment of Syria to put al-Qaeda fully in charge and kill every Christian in the country, literally. They're blowing up churches still every week there. This is a civil war across the Middle East. I want to go over to the map and break this down for you here in the new InfoWars studios. Please pray for InfoWars, this operation as well. We're right at the tip of the spear. The eye of Sauron, of the globalist, is looking right at us. Because in the dark of the night, as the tyranny comes in, the light, the truth, like a candle on a hilltop, shines as a beacon. And InfoWars is a beacon. And I am very humble and try to do the very best job I can. And I want to thank you all for your prayers and for the fact that you've helped us be so successful together in this fight against the tyrants. Let's go to Ted Cruz and Rand Paul.
We should be focused on defending the United States of America. That's why young men and women sign up to join the military, not to as you note, serve as Al-Qaeda's Air Force.
It's hard to argue that the Syrian rebels that you will be arming are not associated forces of Al-Qaeda. Are they not fighting on the same side of a war? Can you argue there's no connection between them, that really this is a three-way war? I know that's the way we're trying to break it down. I don't think it's that easy to say that. I think it's impossible to say that the Syrian rebels are not associated with Al-Qaeda. So there is a great irony that you will be arming forces that a normal common sense use of the word associated can say that these people are associated with Al-Qaeda. That's all. Thank you.
Again, 3 years ago, InfoWars was one of the only media outlets pointing out that Al-Qaeda was really a secret army of NATO and the globalists to destabilize the whole world and bring in tyranny as the response to it, like something out of a Revenge of the Sith episode. Ladies and gentlemen, now that's well known all over the world. That's mainstream news, but only on the Syria issue. We expose it in Iraq, that will shut down the entire operation. And again, I want there to be sovereign nations. I don't want to have one global power bloc that takes over Russia and takes over Iran, especially if it's the Saudi Arabians, the worst in the Middle East, their government, not their people, that are going to run it all. I mean, no, I'm not a villain. InfoWars isn't about chilling with villains, and I know you're not as Americans. So let me just explain this. Once you see the map, it'll be easy to understand for new viewers. And send this on to the prostitute media, the dinosaur media. Explain it to them. Most of them know they're just whores, and they're going along with this evil. You were aiding and abetting Al-Qaeda. Understand that. Now, you know about Iraq, you know about the overthrow, put Saddam in 79, tell him to attack Iran, set him up, tell him to attack Kuwait in 1990, tell him he can go ahead and do it. He does it. They invade. Not saying he's a good guy, but he was CIA. Who put him in there? Who sets this up for turmoil and destabilization? Now, fast forward the last 4 years. Egypt wouldn't go along with overthrowing its neighbor, Libya. So what did they do there? They overthrew that government, put the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda in to move weapons into Benghazi in the east of Libya to then start the larger overthrow. Now it's under Sharia law, under Al-Qaeda control. The Al-Qaeda flag flies in most cities there. That's on record. We showed you those articles. Mainstream news admits that. Okay, so our government bombarded Libya and did all that to put Al-Qaeda in charge. It's just continuing. Then, since Egypt didn't play ball, again, they helped put them in there, but the Egyptian military threw them out because I guess they're bad. They don't like Al-Qaeda, like me. Now, let's continue. Then we've got, over here, you've got Iraq, you've got Syria, you've got Jordan, you've got areas of Lebanon, Israel, all of this going on. Now, right here in Western Iraq, in the last 3 years, the U.S. military and contractors were told to give weapons, missiles, you name it, to Syrian Al-Qaeda rebels to go across and attack Syria. They want to create a new country, this ISIS group, in between Syria and Iraq, a new Wahhabist Saudi Arabian cancer satellite right here out of part of Syria and part of Iraq. Eastern Syria, Western Iraq, okay? Breaking the country up. But instead, they're just going for it all, probably to end up cutting the country in two, which was one of the Pentagon plans, to make this part of Saudi Arabia, see Saudi Arabia? Boom, part of Saudi Arabia. And then again, carving out their own little operation right in here. That's what they get, is they get their own little kingdom for doing this, and then Saudi Arabia gets all this. It'll all be the same thing. Okay, well, Iran doesn't like that because they're the Muslim minority, Shiite, about 19%. This is about 79% Sunni, and Wahhabists are the enforcers of that. 15 of the hijackers come from here, we attack Iraq. Now the people that supposedly attacked us on 9/11, we take over Iraq for them. You understand how evil this is? So this is a proxy war. And this is meant to take down Iran, Russia, everybody else. This is the elected Iraqi government not doing anything to us. It's being overthrown by a NATO, Saudi Arabia, Obama, globalist-backed regime. That is the total plan to then break this into turning it into a Saudi Arabian state, taking over Syria, turning it into a Saudi Arabian state, or at least getting piece of it if they can't get the whole country, while killing every Christian they find in tolerant Syria, tolerant Iraq, killing every Christian they can get their hands on, which the progressives in this country, the anti-Christian people, for some reason, love, and all the whore, right-wing, fake Christian folks won't even talk about or discuss. This is how sick it is. And when you go to the airport, they want to stick their hands down your pants to see if Al-Qaeda's in there, or check your baby's diaper to see if Al-Qaeda or bin Laden's in there. Meanwhile, they publicly run them, and the media is all acting like they don't know what's going on. Gee, this army, this blitzkrieg, just attacked and took over. We don't know where they came from. They were armed right here on the border with Syria. You go up here to Turkey, they've got Al-Qaeda training camps on record invading Syria. Al-Qaeda's being given bases everywhere, just like they were in Pakistan by the CIA. The CIA doesn't work for America, folks. It works for special globalist monopoly interest. Now, that's our breakdown. This report is very important. This humanitarian crisis is just so massive right now. And they're also taking Saudi Arabian Wahhabists into areas of Sudan and other areas while claiming they're fighting radical Islam, and going into the rest of Africa, into Kenya, all the way over to the western coast of Nigeria. These groups work for the globalist, not our government, criminal groups above it. And it's a fact. You now have been given exactly what's happening on this Friday the 13th. Let's go from our new studios over to Studio B with Leanne McAdoo and the conclusion of InfoWars Nightly News for this Friday the 13th, 2014 transmission. And remember, if you're watching or listening to this transmission, you are the resistance.